Hello, hello, my girlie. Welcome to Talks with SAE, the only late night, thought provoking, giggle inducing podcast for my ladies whose days melt into their nights. Tonight, we're talking about something that affects so many of us, but often gets brushed aside, and that's seasonal depression. So, whether you've experienced it yourself or you've seen it with other people, understanding it is crucial, especially as the darker months settle in. I just want to remind you that what I'm sharing comes from my personal experiences and the research I've done. I'm not a mental health professional, so please take the information I discuss with you tonight with a grain of salt. If you are struggling with mental health challenges, please reach out to a licensed professional who can offer you support tailored specifically to your needs. For transparency, all of my research sources will be included in the show notes or the YouTube description box. So, seasonal depression, which is also called seasonal affective disorder, is a type of depression that is tied to the time of the year. So, it's not just about feeling a little gloomy because it's cold or dark outside. It's actually a real mental health condition that impacts millions of people, especially during the fall and winter months when there's less sunlight. Think of it as your brain and body reacting to the shift in seasons in a way that's hard to control. So, with seasonal depression, what's really happening comes down to how our bodies respond to light. In the colder months, in the wintertime, less sunlight messes with our circadian rhythm, which is basically your body's natural clock. This clock helps you regulate your energy levels, your mood, and your sleep patterns. When that rhythm gets thrown off, it can leave you feeling sluggish, irritable, or like you're stuck in a fog. You might notice symptoms like feeling sad or down most of the time, or you notice that you're losing interest in the things that you normally enjoy, or you might be craving carbs or comfort food more than usual. You may feel like your brain is stuck in low gear, or you have a hard time focusing. If all of these things sound familiar to you and it's been going on for weeks or even months, it could be more than just a seasonal funk. And here's the thing, where you live can also play a role in whether or not you fall victim to seasonal depression. So, if you're in a place that has long winters and shorter days, like up north, you're more likely to feel the effects of seasonal depression. Why? Well, it's because less sunlight means more disruption in your body's rhythm. That's why people who live farther from the equator tend to experience seasonal depression more often than those that live in sunnier climates. It's not to say that if you live in a sunnier climate that you won't fall victim to seasonal depression, but normally those that live further away from the equator tend to experience it more. It's also worth noting that women and young adults are more likely to experience seasonal depression, but honestly, it can affect anyone, and your personal history, your family genetics, or even other mental health conditions can make you more prone to seasonal depression. Something I also want to point out is seasonal depression can look different for everyone. For some people, feel stuck in bed all day, while other people may throw themselves into their work or distractions just to avoid dealing with how they're feeling. It can make you feel isolated, which only adds to the stress and only adds to the depression. That's why understanding what it is and understanding how it shows up is so important. And that's why I really want to talk about it as someone who has experienced it. And I'm hoping that this episode helps you understand it more and helps you share it with someone who may need it. Because at the end of the day, knowing what seasonal depression is can help you recognize the signs in yourself or in someone that you care about. And recognizing it is the first step towards figuring out how to manage it. So, whether it's affecting you or someone else, just know this. Number one, you are not alone. And number two, there are ways to navigate it. So there's this big misconception that seasonal depression, and just with depression in general, that it's going to be this dramatic, obvious thing. But sometimes it's the quiet, unnoticed ways that it creeps into our lives. It might look like staying in bed a little longer every morning because getting up feels like a mountain. that you're trying to climb. Or it could show up as irritability over the smallest things, and you just don't understand why you're being so irritable over someone leaving the cap off the toothpaste when normally you're not agitated or annoyed by that, right? It could also be this feeling of detachment during moments that are supposed to bring you happiness and joy, like a holiday dinner with your loved ones, or date night with your spouse, or your girls night out. And the really challenging aspect of seasonal depression from my own experience is that it is so sneaky and it blends into the background of your daily life. So you might say, I'm just so exhausted these days because I'm so busy. Or you try to explain why you're just suddenly lacking motivation, or why your motivation is actually laziness. But the thing is, seasonal depression is hiding in plain sight within those, right? So it oftentimes it's disguised as stress, as burnout, or even perfectionism. And that was the case with me, where I was feeling stressed. I was completely burnt out, and I have always been a perfectionist, and I'm still working on that. And so, having experienced all three of those things, I just thought, you know what? Because I'm stressed, because I'm burnt out, because I'm a perfectionist, um, this is just the way of my life right now. When the reality is, I was experiencing seasonal depression without realizing it. The other side of that is that sometimes we become hyper productive as a way to distract ourselves from the feelings we're not ready to face, especially in the winter time. And recognizing these signs is the first step to acknowledge what's really going on with you and what's really going on with some of the people around you. What makes all of this so tricky is that it does not look the same for everyone. Seasonal depression for some people is physical, so constant fatigue, changes in appetite, even body aches. And for others, seasonal depression is very emotional, so feeling numb, feeling irritable, or being trapped in a cycle of guilt and shame. And it's also worth knowing that men and women might experience seasonal depression differently, and cultural factors can influence how we're expressing or suppressing these emotions, right? Then another layer of this is the impact that seasonal depression can have on our relationships, whether those are romantic relationships, familial relationships, friendships, our spirituality, and especially the relationship we have with ourselves. Have you ever felt like you were pushing people away even though you needed them the most during that time? That's seasonal depression creating this ironic cycle where we isolate ourselves to cope, but then in doing so, we feel even more alone, right? And in my experience, it's such a tough dynamic to navigate, especially when you don't want to burden others with how you're feeling. And then there's also this guilt factor to it, right? Guilt for not feeling happy when everything around you says you should be happy. Feeling guilt for being difficult or low energy or distant around your friends, around your family, around your spouse, around your coworkers. And this guilt, it can make us bottle up our feelings. And as a result, it creates a pressure cooker that eventually spills over. Right? Because if you're holding everything in, holding everything in, holding everything in, eventually you're going to pop, and you're going to lash out, and you're going to lash out at something or someone that does not deserve it because you've been holding all of these things in. And so I just want you to know that the key here is recognizing and acknowledging that these emotions aren't your fault. They're a natural response to what your mind and body are going through at this time. And I also want to just touch on the importance of self-awareness in all of this. Recognizing the signs of seasonal depression isn't just about labeling what you're experiencing. It's also about giving yourself permission to feel all of these things without judgment, and allowing yourself to truly experience these things, truly experience these moments without judgment, right? Because once you know what's happening, you can start to navigate it with intention. You can start to take the steps forward that you need to find support, to find healing, and honestly to find peace. That brings me to something that has really helped me in the past, and that I am implementing this season just to help prevent the depression from creeping back in. But I mean, if it creeps in, it creeps in. I know that I have experienced it enough to know, you know how to navigate it for me. When life feels heavy, finding an anchor can be a total game changer. An anchor is anything that gives you stability, something you can return to when everything else feels chaotic. Something that you can come back to that makes you feel like you're coming back to yourself on a consistent basis. And that could be a ritual, a practice, a prayer, or even a small moment that brings you comfort. For me personally, it started with just coming back to my spirituality and really focusing on my spirituality and allowing myself to remember that my relationship with God is mutual. Another thing was like getting back to me in the sense of really putting effort into my appearance, because me personally, when I am very happy and content with my outfit and with how I present myself externally, it helps to make anything that's going on internally a little bit more bearable. So whether that's something that's good that's going on internally, or in this case, something that is bad going on internally, wearing an outfit that makes me feel like me really helps with that. And that sounds so silly and so simple, but to me, those are my anchors. For me, my anchors have been my personal style and my spirituality and my relationship with God. You have to figure what your anchors are. And one of the most effective anchors is a morning routine. So even if it's just 5 minutes, maybe for you it might be sitting by the window with your favorite tea and just staring outside, allowing your brain to just be empty, to be silent. That could be an anchor for you. Or taking a deep breath before you dive into your day, or writing little love notes to yourself. These small intentional rituals, they reset your energy and they give you a sense of control when everything is so overwhelming. It doesn't have to be elaborate. What matters here is having an anchor feels grounding to you. Another really good anchor is movement. Movement doesn't mean intense workouts. It's really more gentle, intentional movement. So stretching in the morning, going for a walk, going for a run, just little things like that that just help you move and help you not be so still, and that's also good for your body. Even dancing in your living room or in your bedroom or in your kitchen to your favorite song, or watching those movies that you used to watch as a kid, or watching cartoons you used to watch as a kid, and eating the breakfast you ate as a kid. Some of the best moments of our lives were when we were children, because when you're a child, you're so innocent. The world is still so big to you. The world is still so kind in a way. And so, anchoring yourself back to those moments can be really, really helpful, because all of these things help you reconnect with yourself, with your body, and help ground you into the present moment. Another thing is journaling. There's such a therapeutic power in journaling. Sometimes you don't even have to write anything in your journal. Sometimes draw something. You don't have to have it structured. It could be one word, it could be 3 words, it could be 3 pages, it could be a stick figure drawing, but it's still something, right? Journaling allows you to be raw and messy. And in a season and in a time where you're much more prone to depression, allowing yourself to be raw, to be messy, to truly be you and be human is key. It's so key, because you're letting your emotions flow freely. You're giving them a place to exist outside of your mind, and you're letting them out. If you don't already have an anchor, that's completely okay. This is the perfect time to start exploring what your anchors are. Ask yourself, what feels grounding to you? What can you turn to, especially on your toughest days? What makes you feel like you're coming back to yourself? What makes you feel like home? What makes you feel safe? What makes you feel like your presence in this world is truly valuable? Because by the way, it is. It is, okay? By finding your anchor, you create something constant, something to hold on to when the world is chaotic for you, when both your external and internal world feel chaotic. And that gives you a sense of control in the midst of all these like emotional heaviness. And that brings me to talk about self care and the importance of self care when it comes to navigating seasonal depression, because not all of us can go to a mental health professional, whether it's because of affordability issues, or we don't feel comfortable doing so, or we don't know how to. Sometimes you have to start the healing process directly with yourself before you're able to, or before you want to go to a professional or to others. When we think of self care, it's normally associated with solitary material based activities like soaking in a warm bath or curling up with your favorite book or your book of the moment. But it's also getting a full night's rest, right? Allowing yourself to get 8 hours of sleep, 9 hours of sleep, 10 hours of sleep, or it's getting up and actually being active, even though you emotionally and mentally just don't want to. Those are also forms of self care. While these forms of self care are essential, there's another equally crucial aspect of self care and our well being that gets overlooked all the time, and that's community care. Community care involves nurturing the relationships in your life. So, leaning into your support network, which I talked about a couple of episodes back. Because while self care focuses on tending to your individual needs, community care really emphasizes the power of connection and recognizing that we're not meant to navigate life's challenges alone, including seasonal depression. And seasonal depression, it isolates us. It makes us want to withdraw from everything and everyone. But during this time, during this experience, that's when it's so crucial to reach out and help lighten the emotional load you're feeling in ways that solitary self care may not be able to do for you. And sharing your experiences with someone who understands you, or someone who simply being in their presence helps bring you back to life, helps bring you back to earth, helps ground you. These things can remind you that you're not alone in your struggles. And I think that's very important when it comes to navigating seasonal depression. And community care looks very different for different people, and it has various forms to it. It could be meeting a friend for coffee or going to dinner with them. It could be joining a support group. It could be volunteering. It could even be sending a simple text to someone you care about and igniting that interaction, right? These moments don't necessarily fix the problem. They don't necessarily offer solutions either, but they allow you to show up for yourself and show up for others. And that is so important, right? Because they create spaces where understanding, empathy, and mutual support can flourish. Self care allows you to recharge and focus on your own well being. And community care reminds you that healing and strength can also come from connection. And when you're navigating both of these, when you are utilizing both of these, they create a support system for you that truly helps you navigate even worse parts of your seasonal depression. Something I've learned is to reframe the way I view the winter season. I've learned to view it as a chance to really slow down, to really care for myself differently, and to really learn to be more adaptable, because everything feels still and like nothing is moving forward. But just because the surface feels stagnant and it feels quiet doesn't mean that growth isn't happening. Winter is nature's way of resting, right? In the wintertime, that's when bears go into hibernation. You know, nature gives winter grace by resting. So why can't you give yourself that same grace? Look at it as a season to really nurture yourself, even in the smallest ways, because seasonal depression makes it hard to focus on the big picture. And because it's doing that, instead of trying to fight it, why don't you just lean into the little joys of life, into the little moments of happiness, right? So, the comfort of your favorite tea that you can only really have during this time of the year, because if you have hot tea in the summer, it doesn't feel the same, right? Or even really catching up on all of your favorite shows, or revamping your wardrobe, or reorganizing your bedroom or your kitchen. These little things, these small acts, they may not fix everything, they might not fix anything, but they offer a little bit of relief, and they remind you in the smallest ways that there's beauty in the harder seasons. Let it be a time where you can really, really pause and take inventory of where you are and start to like plant seeds for whatever comes next for you, whatever you want to come next. even if that just means taking care of yourself one day at a time. You can use this time to connect with your community, to connect with yourself, to connect with your spirituality, to lean on your support system, and remind yourself that you don't have to navigate it all alone, because you don't have to navigate it all alone. Now I want to share with you the tips that I've personally used in the past when I was experiencing seasonal depression, and tips that I'm still using even now. The first tip is gratitude and shifting your focus. I know, my girlie, it's not always easy when you're in a low place, but even the tiniest shift in your perspective can make a huge difference. Some days it might feel like there's nothing to be thankful for, but I promise you, even on your hardest days, even on your worst days, there's something to be thankful for. And remember that you have experienced all of your worst days and you thought you couldn't get through them, and you did get through them. So force yourself to find moments of gratitude. It could be something as simple as you were able to make your morning coffee perfectly, every ingredient of that coffee, from the coffee bean to the amount of syrup, if you use syrup, to the type of milk you're using. It just all comes together so perfectly. Or it could be you finally got that pair of winter gloves that just goes with every single outfit. Or it could be that you can watch all of your favorite holiday movies again because they're all available on Hulu or Netflix or wherever you watch your shows and movies. The fact that you just got out of bed, that's something to be thankful for. Gratitude doesn't have to be about big life-changing moments. It's really about noticing the small wins. So take a few minutes every day to write down three things you're grateful for. They don't have to be profound, they don't have to be big, they don't have to be extreme, just anything that you're grateful for. And if you are constantly repeating the same things you're grateful for, that's okay. If it's something or things that are new every day that you're grateful for, that's okay too. Just the act of noticing what you're grateful for can really help you reframe your mindset over time. The second tip I have for you is to connect with nature. And I know it's cold, and the idea of going outside feels like a lot, but nature is one of the most grounding tools we have, even in winter. There is actual science behind it. You know, there's something about being outdoors that just shifts your energy. I don't know if it's the crisp air. I don't know if it's the sound of the leaves or the branches or the sticks, or maybe it's just standing still and looking up at the sky. So whether it snows where you are, or it rains, or it's completely sunny during the winter time, just go outside for a little bit, connect with nature. It doesn't have to be this big, grand adventure. You don't need to spend hours outside. Going outside for 5 minutes can make a difference. Stepping out into your porch or your balcony, or just walking to your mailbox, or sitting by a window and watching the trees move, watching the clouds move. Nature reminds us that change is constant, just like the seasons. And it reminds us that this feeling, this experience, this depression will pass. The third tip I have is accepting your personal journey and knowing that it's okay to not have it all figured out. I think during the winter months, that's when a lot of New Year's goals and New Year's vision boards are created. And on top of that, that's when seasonal depression is more prevalent. We can feel very stuck or feel like we're falling behind. But I need you to hear this, my girlie. Healing isn't linear. Some days you will feel better, other days you will feel completely exhausted and spent. And there are other days where you're just like, what is happening? And all of that is okay. There's no quick fix to any of this. There's no quick fix for mental health. And that doesn't reflect your strength. It doesn't reflect your worth. That's just the realities of these experiences for us. So be patient with yourself. Understand that healing from this experience takes time, and that time is made up of small, consistent steps and patience and acceptance and self nourishment. Maybe today for you, that small, consistent step is water or letting yourself take a nap. And then tomorrow it looks like journaling for 5 minutes or going for a walk. The key is always to show up for yourself in little ways, even when it feels hard. The fourth tip I have is celebrating the little wins and little moments in your life. In the middle of a hard season, it's so easy to ignore and dismiss our small wins, but they matter. They matter. Maybe you made it out of bed when you didn't want to. Maybe you sent that text that you've been putting off, or you took a 5 minute walk outside, or you drank 8 cups of water today. These are little things, but they're proof that you're moving forward. So just take a second to acknowledge them. Give yourself credit. These little wins, they build momentum and they start to help you come out of that hole, come out of that experience of lowness. Even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, I promise you, they're going to remind you that you're capable of showing up for yourself even in the hardest times. The last tip I have for you is to reach out. My girlie, please remember that you don't have to go through this alone. Seasonal depression can feel so isolating, but you don't have to carry it all on your own. So whether it's leaning on a friend, going to family, reaching out to a licensed professional, seeking support and asking for help isn't a weakness. I always say this, it's not a weakness to ask for help and to acknowledge that you need help or that you want help. There's so many ways to connect and ask for help and reach out. If you're feeling isolated, there are online communities, there's mental health resources. And if you're feeling really stuck, reaching out to a professional can help you find the tools you need and the strategies you need to manage what you're feeling. And I just want this to be your reminder. It's okay to ask for help. You are completely deserving of support. And there's courage in admitting when you do need help because no one should have to navigate the weight of seasonal depression alone. And as someone who has had to navigate it on my own because I was so embarrassed and so ashamed of what I was going through and I didn't completely understand it, I kept it all in and I kept it to myself. And he manifested into some of the worst moments of my life. And I don't want you to experience those moments as well. I think we often try to rush the process of overcoming and healing when it comes to depression. There's no cure for depression because it's not a one size fits all. And when it comes to seasonal depression, I think that's when it feels like healing or improvement is taking forever. But patience is so crucial, my girlie. You're healing during this time, during this experience. It takes time. And when you're in the middle of seasonal depression, it's so, so easy to feel like it's never going to end. But change does happen. And patience isn't about doing nothing, it's about taking small, consistent steps. It's about reflecting, it's about accepting, allowing yourself to truly experience what you are going through, to remind yourself that you can look for anchors, that you have anchors. So even on the darkest of days, my girlie, don't ever lose hope. Don't ever, ever lose hope. Trust yourself. Trust the timing of your life. Trust the timing of your experiences. Trust that the work that you're doing now, no matter how small or silly or insignificant it feels to you, it's setting the stage for happier moments, for improvement, and setting the stage for healing. And patience and hope go hand in hand. And when you embrace both of them, you'll see that change really is happening, even when it feels slow. So take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath and trust the process of your life, my girlie. Trust the process of your experiences. All right, my girlie, I want to leave you with one final reminder tonight, and that is you are never, 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 ever alone in any of this. Your feelings, your experiences are all so important and so valid. Seasonal depression may make you feel like you're the only one who's struggling, but trust me, there's so many people who understand you, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to question everything. And it's okay to not be okay. Please take care of yourself. Give yourself the space to feel and know that every day that you are on this earth is a new day, a new opportunity to heal. It's a new opportunity for the smallest bit of progress. And even if it doesn't feel like it right now. And to help with all of this, I've created a free winter self-care checklist just for you. It's a free, simple, yet effective checklist full of self care and wellness tips designed to help you manage the lows of the winter season In addition to that, I have a mental health resources digital guide that's a comprehensive list of national and international mental health resources. You can find both of these free resources in the show notes or in the YouTube description. Before we wrap up, let's talk about next week's episode. Next week, we're diving into 2025 and going beyond the resolutions. This episode will be all about setting meaningful, actionable goals for the new year that truly align with your personal values rather than just traditional resolution. And that's it for tonight's episode, my girlie. Thank you for joining me this evening. I'm so glad to have you on this journey. If you've enjoyed this episode, go ahead and tap that follow or subscribe button and leave a review. It lets me and the algorithms know you're really here to grow, learn, and say. You can also find me and Talks with SAE on Instagram at Talks with SAE. And be sure to share this episode and the podcast with your girlies so they can say as well. Again, thank you, my girlie, for joining me, and more importantly, thank you for existing. Until next time, self-love bells.